It's me again. So I guess I have a little bit more to say. Today so far has been like kind of productive. I have been able to, do a little writing. It's not like I do, but at least like I'm getting something done. That is kind of like my goal. I want to get just a little bit done every day so I can create this habit. And then, even when things are not really flowing, I'll be able to, at least like I don't know, like fix the stuff that is, that's there. Just yeah, pretty much that. And I was also able to read. That was also exciting. I'm reading Paradise Lost, and now it's only book 12. That I now be done with this reading. This is a book I talked about before. This book, this poem, it kind of like changed my life. A lot of like different points since I first heard of it. So it's very exciting for me to be going through again, particularly because I'm planning on getting a tattoo with like one of the quotes from Paradise Lost. Also, I think it's going to rain, and so it's been interesting. Although I will say that as I was reading, something that was kind of happening is that I was thinking about experiences that I had regarding religion, and then but I was mostly like just keeping at arm's length and trying not to. Not to like let those things impact me because it's not that it was nothing like super negative. It's just that sometimes the conflict exists, like the friction that can kind of happen, and not as I said, like nothing, but I was able to ultimately kind of like put it out, kind of like put it away. I was keeping it at arm's length. So like I didn't get triggered or anything, although this was certainly a possible outcome. But yeah, so I've been talking a lot about me and the version of myself that I wanted to be when I was younger, and the way I kind of like rationalize situations so that I could be that person. It's a bunch of different personality traits, but I think I can sum up all of that with strength. I wanted to be strong. I was projecting strength. Naturally, the way I saw strength when I was, like 17 is very different from right now how I see it at 27. It is much healthier and it's way less traumatized because that is kind of like an issue. I think that even like my need, my urge to project strength, it came from the fact that I had that trauma, and doing that I felt weak and vulnerable, and I didn't want to feel like that again. And there's also like more things from like the past, any insecurities I have in general. For example, you're scared of rejection. When you can always be scared of rejection, but I think that when I was that age, I was more scared because I was burying it deep down. So like I did the surface, you couldn't see that, but when I just assessed things, that was very clearly what was happening. And yeah, so like strength. But as I mentioned before, my version of strength was very like it's very abrasive. It was like me imposing myself on people, not in like in a bad way. You could argue like you imposing yourself on people is always bad, but I do think that there's a time and a place for that. There are moments where kind of like you need to establish boundaries. So like it is what it is. But it is something that I felt like I wanted to do that at every at every turn, because everything that was happening was making me feel vulnerable and insecure. Like insecurities in general is something that for the longest time I didn't want to acknowledge for a variety of reasons. One of them, for example, was that I thought that if I acknowledged it, because I thought that if I didn't acknowledge those shortcomings of mine, like they were not real, they wouldn't impact in my life, they wouldn't affect me. But that's not how things happen. It's never really been how things happen. But that was how, for a long time, I was proceeding, how I was acting, and it didn't really help. It didn't really lead to many positive outcomes. But it is I'm not thinking about the past in terms of like I wish I could have done things differently, because I had to had the life experience I have for me to get to a point where I'm like, yeah, that is not good, that's kind of bad, I need to to do better. And but maybe better like it's not the right word, because it's kind of like it can be very generic, very generic, just saying like what is good, like what is what's something bad. And different contexts, they bring a different interpretations to that. So I wanted to be, I think freer is a better word that I can use, because as we mentioned before, I think every time I discover something about myself, every time I find out something what's kind of like going on behind the curtain, it ends up being kind of like better for me, because that's kind of like I have like one less weight, one less thing like dragging me down. And it is interesting because sometimes I feel like this past couple of weeks, past few days, I've been doing really well in terms of like me getting better, me developing and improving. But I feel like, for the several months before that, I wasn't really like evolving that much, and I was like so used to like not evolving. Then now that it is happening, I'm feeling very, I'm being very motivated to want to keep it making it happen. And I don't really know how long this is going to last, but I want to kind of like get things going on for me while it does, because as I said, I don't know when I'm gonna hit a plateau and then I'll be kind of stuck. I don't think I'll be stuck, because every time I develop, like there is there's the new stage that I am at, having developed, but it is something that I am, but yeah. So like I'm this moment my end, but I will still have, like the improvements and the good things that happen. That it's kind of like how I am, mostly focusing on things, and ultimately it is. I mean, like I do argue, about like how much is it up to me, because historically, when there have been many moments when I tried to press for progress, like with me, and it didn't really happen. I kind of like just ended up burning out, or just hitting like a slump, a growth slump, and that's not what I want. So I don't want to force it, because sometimes like it is good for you to get kind of like tired of your head. Maybe like right now I want to change that, because the reason why I say that is because historically there's been so much, there's been so many moments where I kind of like just get sick of it in my head. And it's great, because like it's kind of like I'm a little free when I get sick of it, because it means that I'm kind of like trying to exist without, out of my head. And and usually it's in those moments that I can be like the most productive, because otherwise, like when I'm just stuck here, sometimes I get completely consumed by my fantasies, by my daydreams, and that is not what I want. That is not, I mentioned this earlier today, like I want to live my life, I want to look back a decade from now and feel like I have been doing things, not that I was, stuck in my head, not that I was, kind of like not doing anything, which I mean, I know that I had been doing things, this past decade, but, compared to, I think, how much I wanted to have done, although like that was like very unrealistic, but, like I haven't really been doing that much. And, I think I have to feel this for a little while before I start to acknowledge the things that, I did do, because this is the satisfaction that I'm having with myself. Like this is leading me to just want to do better in the future, to do more, maybe, yeah, not better, do more. That is kind of like what I want to do, and that can mean 1,000 different things, and I kind of like want this. It can be 1,000 different things, but then I want like to try every single one of those 1,000 things. I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna get to it, but I want to like kind of like dream big in this particular context, because I do find that this is, I do think that in this next decade, I will be able to kind of like, hopefully I'll have like more opportunities to do things. I'll have the opportunity to figure things out, and I don't really know what exactly is. Sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought. But I just think that because a decade from now I'll be even more developed than I am right now. So I don't think I will look back and be like, oh, I wasted my time. But so the way that I'm looking at it right now. But I think that I have to kind of like keep going. I have to just get myself to get myself moving, and I think this feeling of dissatisfaction is going to help me with that. I don't want it necessarily like all throughout like the next decade, but I do think that having this feeling once in a while, like it can be good, it can be productive, it can be helpful. But yeah, so in terms of me kind of like accepting myself, and not only myself right now, because I do find like kind of easy for me to accept like where I am at personality wise, regarding like the things that I've done or haven't done. Like there's still a bit of an issue, but like my personality traits, I'm kind of like okay with where I am at right now, and there's like no pretenses anymore, so that is good. And so now I have to extend this particular feeling to the past. I have to look back at when I was younger and not feel kind of like not feel like oppressed by guilt and shame for not really being guilt and embarrassment for not being that version of myself. So as I said, I wanted to project strength, and that is something that according to my vision back when I was at that age, I think I rationalized my situation into thinking into like me thinking that I had, but like now that I look back, I'm like I kind of didn't, like maybe not always, but because as I said, like for right now I have like I'm way more chill about things, like like me not, having a certain personality trait, me not really having a certain capacity is not something that is, like weighing on me as much as it used to. But as I said, like I have to acknowledge, because there is this sort of like transition that I can make. Okay, it's okay that I'm not like this right now because I already had the moment where I was that thing. But like that's not the case. Like I wasn't that thing then. I'm not this thing now. So I have to just let things go, and it's a process, it's a journey, and I don't know what the destination is. I mean, I have like an idea of what it is, but the thing about growth is that like the situation is constantly expanding. So what is like what is where I want to get at today, like I'm not really in, because I think that sometimes I envision the future, and I think more in terms of like what I don't want to do. So I don't want to get stuck with my maladaptive daydreaming. I don't want that for me. And this is something I have not wanted for over a decade at this point. And although like like a decade ago, like I still had some leeway to rationalize the situation. Right now, like not so much. And it is important for me to acknowledge that I am some of like these shortcomings and some of the things that I did wrong, that I didn't do as well, like I haven't solved that right now. Like I'm not doing that much better. But the thing is that, as I said, like I wanted my maladaptive daydreaming to no longer be an issue, and this has been the case for a decade. And like every time something happens, I get closer, but I'm not at a point where it is fixed. But I do think that these recent developments, they might help me, because they are part of like what was kind of like holding me back, and keeping me kind of like jailed inside. And yeah, so basically what I'm trying to say is that I tried to project strength back then, and it didn't really happen. It didn't occur the way I wanted. And I was struggling even back then with being the person that I wanted to be. This person who, like I said, is strong, is smart, is proactive, is assertive, is other adjectives similar to this one, and to this one's. And like that was not really the case. I was, as I mentioned before, I'm kind of like starting to accept that I was a little shy, that I was and to this day I'm still a little shy, but I don't think that right now it is in a way that is getting in the way of me achieving my goals and objectives, which was the case back then. I think it's also because my goals and objectives, like they have changed with time. And right now I'm still building like this vision of myself in the future. I still don't know where I'm getting, how am I getting there, and where exactly I'm getting it. But like I have at least the tools to keep going. It's kind of like I'm walking this path, and like there's some fog ahead of me. So I'm not really seeing where I'm heading, but I am walking. I'm making the effort of like getting closer to my destination, and that is sometimes like as much as you can do. I'm thinking about the future. It can be scary. It can be kind of like very. I can just make it just very exciting. It's very anxiety inducing. Like that's the way to put it. And right now I'm doing okay, like in terms of like I'm not feeling anxious, I'm not feeling bad. I am just doing my own thing. And for once I can kind of like affirm that this right now my intentions are of like making progress, like I want to keep on going, and that is better than what I've had for so long. That I'm feeling confident. Maybe I shouldn't be, because as I said, there's so many unanswered questions, but like it doesn't matter that the questions are unanswered. I don't need to know the answers for me to keep going, which is no different from what I used to think when I was younger, when I was in my late teens, early 20s. I felt, not thinking my early 20s, I already started to shift a little bit, but in my late teens, I really thought that I needed to know where I was heading, for me to start getting there, for me to start going. And in a certain ways, like I mean, depending on the effort that you're making, you do need to have at least an idea of where you're getting at. But it is not necessary. Like you don't have to freeze into your place when you don't know. You can just kind of like walk a little bit in the dark. And that is something that not only did I not want to do, but it was something I didn't want to do like internally. Like externally, I was like trying to push for like for movement. I wanted to to move, I wanted to do things, and but like I wasn't doing things, and that has to do with this whole situation of like me not, like being not being ready. There was like 1,000 different things that were wrong with me at that point in time. Not saying this in a, not trying to, just be mean to myself. It's that it kind of like there was everything wrong, just with like any other, teenager, any other young adult. But yeah, but that was kind of the thing that I was sorry. But like this, so some of like me being frozen in place, it was fear. And I mean, there were like the fear of like failing, the fear of things not working out, fear of me never really getting to the point I wanted to get, never really achieving the things I wanted to achieve, to like not being productive. And I think like this translated on a daily basis with like me feeling like whether I was being productive or not, because that was something that I was really struggling with. Like I think I rationalized productivity quite often back when I was younger, because I had to have this feeling that like I was doing things, that I was making progress, that I was strong, and that was kind of like the way for me to go about things. And it's interesting because like lots have changed, but something that is a constant, because like back then, me working on my novel, like it kind of like served as still, that was something that I felt like was productive, but I was also struggling with it back then. And today, if I get to work a little on my novel, I still think that like it is productive, because it is. As I mentioned before, writing is one of the things that really drive me, like really motivates me, really inspires me, really it's very fulfilling. It leads to me being happy with myself, and just being happy in general. Like whenever I'm working on a project like that. So but the thing is that I kind of like at a time I thought that I would be able to get a book out like every year. So I kind of, the first one was in 2015. So I went, the second one should be in 2016, the third one in 2017. The second one was 2024, it was like last year. And my plan right now is for the third one to come out 2026. So almost like 9 years after I kind of like established that deadline. And as British, I was talking about deadlines earlier, and like they don't always work out. I think you have to be ready and in the right mindset for deadlines to work, because for so long like they did absolutely nothing. I think it's also because a lot of the pressure was internal. If I have like an external thing, for example, I'm taking an exam, I'm taking a test, and middle of the exam, like I kind of like have to focus, because there's like deadline when it's I no longer have the opportunity to do anything. So I have to like, so I think like that external pressure is something that I, ever since like I graduated high school, I stopped feeling. And like it was something that on one hand I wanted to create the situations for myself, but it never really worked out. But but ideally, like I don't want that to work out. I don't want to need external pressure for me to be able to produce. I think that is very toxic, like that's not great. And also like because there are so many other things that I want to do now that I don't have to do with my academic and professional life, like, so like there's never really going to be any type of pressure. So I need to be able to operate on my own pace, but focusing, but like with a name, focusing on concluding the project. And I think that like right now I am definitely dealing with that better than I would like a year ago. Same thing, like going all the way back, because it was both. It's kind of interesting because that is so freeing. Like when I graduated high school, I no longer had like that pressure for me every day. So it should be liberating. But I kind of like I was buried under the weight of like all the things that I wasn't doing, and I had the way I look at the situations I was, ended up not the way situations I walked into, but like the ones I ended up being crushed into. Like, and sometimes like there was some type of pressure, but even that it kind of like failed. Something else I want to talk about right now is I feel like I've been a little more dissociative lately. I've been dissociating more, but like I'm not really living, because I feel like at least with me as things are right now, I kind of like I get a hint of that. I'm like, okay, if I keep going this path, I'm going to dissociate. So I've been kind of like pulling back, because I had it, but it just leads to this weird feelings, this very uncomfortable feelings of like me, because that's why I'm looking in the mirror, like looking at the mirror. I start to dissociate. I think there's something about sometimes like I will look at myself and it feels like I'm like looking like deep into my soul, and it is always, this is not something new for me, but I do think that it is telling that I'm kind of like, I don't wanna look too deep into this because I'll be kind of like unhappy with what I'm seeing. And it's interesting because like these feelings, like these moments that I have, like I'm thinking about, for example, a decade ago or like 8 years ago, I kind of like, it will be this thing, there will be a mix of like me looking to myself, I was seeing this version that is, that wasn't really me, but it was the version I wanted to be, and the version which involved like all these dreams, fantasies, daydreams, and all that. And the version who was I really was. And it's interesting because like I would sometimes go from one to the other. Sometimes like they would happen at different times. I think that whether I'm manic or depressed, it also plays a part. On which vision of myself I'm gonna have. But like whenever I was here, I was kind of miserable. Although to be fair, I was younger, so I still felt like there was plenty of time in the future. And I mean, right now, like I still, have plenty of time. But it's just that, I'm kind of like no longer at my prime. It feels like I want, like to get to a point someday where I'm like, this is my prime. But I want that to be defined by the things that I'm doing, and by my constancy, and balance. I want to be stable, and but I have to, but it's not just like me being happy with myself, like in my mind. I need like external deeds, external things for me to feel like well-rounded, feel like I am actually living and not just existing, because that's kind of like the thing, like for so long, this is not like a new notion for me. I've been kind of like aware of it for the longest time, but sometimes you just exist, and when you just exist, like there's no reason to keep going, because like it's kind of like an effort. It is something that you're doing that like it has this weight and not the joy. So like that's not what I want to look into my life and be like, I'm happy, and not just because of my little delights, little pleasures that I have. So for example, food cannot be the only thing that is keeping me going, because like it is kind of like a reward in a way. It is something that it is important, but like it is not enough to keep me going, basically. So I have to have more things. I think that if I were able to work on my own, if I'm able to convert, I don't want to convert necessarily all my time into writing, because that is just it's unrealistic, number one, yes, but also like there are other things that I enjoy doing, there are other things that I like, that I like doing, that I want to do. But I still would like to have like half of the time. Is that too much? Still, I would like to have a consistent writing schedule. Like I would really enjoy being able to put in the writing, because as I mentioned before, like having, if I can look back a decade from now and I have like 5 books that I published, I think that would actually get me to be very happy with where I am at. And I'm giving myself like a 2-year deadline, because as I mentioned, when I was younger, I wanted like the turn around of like 1 book a year, but like that is, I'm not at least at that point yet. But like 1 book every 2 years, like that is doable. And that is, as I said, like I just know my life would be better if I could write all the time. But once again, I don't want to put all my eggs in this one basket, because as I mentioned, just for example, just food is not good enough. I need a variety of things. I need all different areas of my life to like be a little fulfilling, and a little enriching too. Like you have to aggregate, you have to add things to my life and to my experience. And I don't know, like I think that like every day that I'm like improving and doing better, I'm closer to that goal. But still it is not, I don't know, I don't want to get super excited about that. I don't want to hype myself up, because maybe this is not going to lead to like the improvements that I want to. Because for example, I finished the second novel, and like I kind of like hoped that after that, like I'll be able to breeze past not about number 3 so much, so that I wanted to have finished it this year. But like that is just not what happened. That is, I'm still kind of like stuck in the same the same place. And of course, like this does give me, like this highlights the fact that maybe like I will never really be able to operate at full capacity all the time. Maybe I'll have to just attach myself to these moments. And I don't doubt that like that might be the reality, but I do think that maybe at the very least I could kind of like shorten the times, the moments in between, like when I'm being productive, when I'm getting things done. Because as things are, I'm not, as things are, I am not happy. I'm not satisfied with my performance, and I no longer have that unhealthy, toxic idea of productivity. So when I say that I'm not happy, I'm not being, unfair to myself. It's just that I don't know. I don't always control my head, which is something that, when I look at myself historically, it's very obvious, has always been the case. But like I think there were several different moments in my life when I really believed that I had this control, that I was in charge, and that didn't pan out the way I wanted. But I do think that I'm better. I'm doing better. I have at least like less impediments in my head, and that is, progress. That is, and even if like I'm not seeing all the results right now, like on the long run, I'm gonna see that, because basically I was hoping that because I'm having these moments of discovery and acceptance, that I will be able to work directly on my novel, and I'm still making like very little progress, but it's progress nonetheless. I just, think like if I work at this pace, I will not be able to get the novel out by, June next year. So there's that. I'm also not gonna talk about it. I was thinking about, like when it comes to my writing, wanting to put myself out there, but like, this is not the day. I'm getting kind of like tired. Honestly, I'm kind of like tired of talking about myself, which is quite rare, because one way or another, I'm always talking about myself, to myself, with myself. So it's just this, journey, and sometimes, and a lot of the time, it is unfortunately like, just like fantasies, but I want here. But it's just like fantasies, but that's what I'm trying to cut back on. But yeah, so I'm kind of like tired of talking, tired of talking about myself. So I'm gonna wrap this up. Anyways, bye.